Chapter 61. Chinemo turned off the computer and stood up. But he didn't go to sleep right away. His slender fingers moved slightly, and he sent a WeChat message to Fujio. Did you just reject a player's friend request? Fujio agreed, and felt that she should flirt with him again before going to sleep. She opened the voice message and replied, Except for the Almighty, I didn't add anyone else in the game. Are you touched? Do you want to marry me? If it's someone with a body like the Almighty's, I might consider sleeping with him. Chinemo took the documents from Secretary Liang. He was still pressing his phone with one hand, and his lazy voice came into Secretary Liang's ears, with the clarity of a teenager. Secretary Liang couldn't hear the voice on the other side of the phone, but his CEO suddenly stopped moving. He stood there without saying a word, and the expression on his face kept changing. His fair and slender fingers clutched the phone beside his ear, and his eyes were filled with uncontrollable coldness. It was as if he would crush the person on the other side of the phone to death if he said one more word. Secretary Liang didn't dare to watch anymore. He lowered his head and pretended to pack his bag. Finally, his CEO took a deep breath, opened the WeChat message, and replied with a deep voice message. If I hear the word sleep from your mouth again, you don't have to talk anymore. Sleep? Secretary Liang's eyes were burning. Chinemo glanced at him and closed the door with an indifferent expression. Secretary Liang. No, CEO, where do you want me to go in the middle of the night? It's very cold outside the rooftop. After dealing with the eavesdropper, Chinemo unbuttoned his shirt with one hand and sent a voice message with the other. The player who added you is my agent. I know. Fujio twirled her silver hair with her fingers and put her legs on the computer table, looking indescribably handsome. If I don't want to, I can use your back door. Why should I use someone else's? Maybe it was because it was too late, but when the youngster's voice rang in her ears, it didn't sound so annoying anymore. Chinemo pulled out a towel from the side. When he tilted his head, his white shirt was half open, revealing his beautiful abs and sexy mermaid lines. As he unbuttoned his pants, they moved up slightly. At that moment, Chinemo seemed to have thought of something. He paused for a moment and quickly threw the trousers to the side. He pressed the phone screen and replied indifferently, Tomorrow, the Chin group will sign the first batch of rookies. As a specially recruited member, you can come directly. What about the preliminaries in half a month? This is an internal move. Fujio understood Almighty Chin's meaning with just these 3 words. She curled up the corner of her mouth and said, I'll go after I buy the accessories tomorrow. Yes. This was Almighty Chin's reply. If he didn't say anything, it would always be a few words incomparably cold. Fujio didn't mind. She yawned and laid down on the bed casually, her soft silver hair spread out, accentuating her white pointy chin. She replied in a daze, good night. In the foggy bathroom, Chinemo listened to the sound coming from the phone. It was low and soft, not at all like the domineering and mischievous youngster that usually infuriated people. Subconsciously, his fingers slid across the screen and tapped on the short green voice message again. Separated by the fog, no one could see the expression on Chinmo's elegant and handsome face. Chapter 62. After realizing what he had done, Almighty Chin's beautiful eyebrows furrowed, the black hair hanging in front of his forehead was still dripping water, and just like that, it hit the phone screen. Chinemo took the towel and threw the phone away. He must have played too much games that his fingers were broken. Why did he think that guy's voice was nice? He obviously wanted someone to strangle him. Another night passed. Fujio woke up the next day, but she wasn't in a hurry to go to school. It was Wednesday. Although school was important, buying spare parts and signing with the Chin group were obviously more important. Fujio thought about it and decided to ask for a leave. When she made this request, Chen Xiaodong stood beside her and looked at her with an expression that said, I knew young master wouldn't be obedient for a month. You're going to be a demon again. Fujio curled her lips into a smile. She freed one hand, leaned over, and patted his cheek lightly. Your young master, have something to do. Go to class by yourself, and help me ask for leave, sick leave. Don't always let the teacher think that I like to skip classes. Chen Xiaodong was stunned the first time he was patted. His young master was too handsome up close, so handsome that he couldn't react. Also, his young master winked at him. Chen Xiaodong took a deep breath. No, he had to stay away from his young master in the future. What if he was turned gay? He was going to get married and have kids in the future. According to the information provided by the Almighty, the internal recruitment for the Qin Group's team would officially start after 1. Fujio had money on hand now. Even though it was only 4 digits, it wasn't a problem for her to buy a good computer. For example, graphics cards and RAM. She really didn't understand physics, so she didn't want to waste the teachers at school. Instead, she wanted to find a place to buy her equipment. Not only did she want to protect her family's company, but she also wanted to slap the faces of those ungrateful scumbags who left just like that. Fujio's long and narrow eyes narrowed. She unwrapped a lollipop and put it in her mouth. She put her left hand in her pocket and looked up at the computer city in front of her. It was said that there were a lot of good stuff hidden here. Many professional players came here to buy spare parts. It was a useful place for this competition. Fujio pushed the door open and walked in. She followed the guide on the technology forum and found the store with the cool decorations. It was indeed different from the ordinary computer shops outside. The moment they entered, they felt as if they had entered an electronic world. There were 4 big screens in the shop, each of which was playing the game. This was Almighty Qin's in-game image. He lifted one hand, and black feathers filled the sky, forming a giant vortex. Each feather could kill the opponent. Fujio also thought that Almighty Qin's ultimate move was very cool, but her thin lips perked up. This seemed to be the scene of them playing the game together yesterday. After all, the person who cooperated with the Almighty to use this ultimate move was her. Fujio recognized her own character, Spadesy. It seemed like playing with the Almighty had a bigger impact than she had imagined. The book that they had seen last night had been used by the shop as a display. She wondered if the shop owner would give her a discount if she told them her identity. Chapter 63. Fujio knew that he wasn't referring to her just from the way he addressed her. After all, that old guy wanted the whole world to know that she, the prodigal, had nothing to do with him anymore. Since he wasn't referring to her, was he referring to another young master Fu? Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked to her side. A young man about the same age as her, dressed in a white suit. He was quite good-looking, but his head was like his mother's, so he wasn't very tall. He didn't seem to like talking much, but there was a hint of impatience in his eyes. He looked like a spoiled young master. This young master was none other than Fu Zhongyi's most precious illegitimate son, Fu Ximing. There were 2 people who came with him to buy accessories, and Fujio knew one of them. No, not really. To be exact, they had met face to face. Back then, she was still naive and dressed like a hooligan. When she quarreled with He Honghua, it was this guy who looked at her with a smile on his face. Fujio could still remember the way he looked at her, contemptuous and disdainful. It was probably because she kept seeing that gaze that she would quarrel with He Honghua over trivial matters. The manager of the company, Duze, the scumbag who caused her mother to be at a loss. Fujio bit the lollipop with her white teeth, and the corner of her mouth slowly turned up into a smile. Was everyone here? She really had to remember these 2 faces. Or else what would happen if she missed when she hit them? Duze also saw the prodigal son that he despised the most. In the past, out of consideration for He Honghua, he still had to address him as young Master Fu whenever he saw him. In actual fact, he had long hated this mother and son pair. The older one was from the countryside, and the younger one had no taste. Being around them would lower his status, unlike the person he was following now, who was not only knowledgeable, but also talented in games. They were both children of the Fu family, but this person's future was more than twice as bright as that prodigal son's. Young master. Duze glanced at Fujio and turned back to Fu Ximing. Why don't we go over there and take a look? There are so many flies here, and it would be bad if they spoil your mood. Fu Ximing also recognized Fujio. But so what? He had never put his stupid brother in his eyes. When he was young, he was always called a bastard. He had to yield to Fujio in everything. Now he was right. Who was Fujio anyway? That kind of trash wasn't even worth a glance from him. Fu Ximing raised his chin, pulled up the zipper of his jacket, and said seriously, "He doesn't need to leave, so why should I? Keep picking. Didn't you just say that the things here are good? My keyboard needs a new one a long time ago. This one looks good. I'll buy it here." "All right." Duze laughed. "Young master is right. If he doesn't need to leave, then we don't need to leave either." The other person also laughed. Young Master Fu is indeed knowledgeable about computers. When we go to the Qin group later, I will be able to help young Master Fu. I still need Manager Li's help. Duze continued. I heard that Manager Feng is very particular about first impressions. In addition to playing games well, he must also be good-looking. This. Chapter 64. Fu Ximing was a calm kid. After hearing Manager Li's words, he didn't show too much excitement. It was good for a high school student to have this little bit of arrogance. Duze laughed. He wasn't proud, but he wanted that prodigal to hear the news. He wanted to see the difference between him and young Master Fu. It would be best if he got angry again and started a fight with them in the shop. Then he would tell He Honghua about it. Then He Honghua's company wouldn't need any more trouble, and it would definitely collapse. Duze's plan was good, but he didn't expect that Fujio wouldn't be angry at all. Fujio was not angry at all after hearing their words. Instead, she picked up a mouse and asked the shop assistant, "How much is this model?" That careless look made it seem like she didn't care about them at all. Duze frowned, but he quickly relaxed. Nowadays, even people who don't know anything about computers come to this shop to mess around. In the future, this shop should have a VIP system, or something to regulate who can enter and who can't. Manager Li knew a little about the Fu family's business, so he glanced at Fujio. "Manager Du, let's do our own thing. Don't care about these small fries. If they want to burn money, let them. This set of equipment isn't cheap." Duze thought about it and agreed. He Honghua's current wealth wasn't enough for this prodigal. Buy it, the more the better. But unexpectedly, Fu Ximing also took a fancy to the mouse in Fujio's hand. "I want that model too." Duze opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. Fujio curled up the corner of her lips. She looked so mischievous that the shop assistant blushed. "I'm really sorry." The shop manager heard the sound and walked over. "This is the same model as the Almighty's. There's only one left in the shop." "Only one left? Then who should it belong to?" The shop assistant felt that it should belong to this silver-haired handsome young man. After all, he was holding it in his hand and had to pay for it. But Duze wanted to challenge the bottom line. Since it's good stuff, it should belong to whoever pays more. This. The shop manager looked a little embarrassed. To be honest, as a businessman, of course he wanted to make more money. But doing business like this was too unreasonable. In the future, no one would come to their shop to spend money. Just as he was about to say something, he saw a few people in combat uniforms walk in from outside the shop. One of them was about 1.8 meters tall and looked very attractive. It was obvious that he came from a good family. He put a hand on Fu Ximing's shoulder and asked in a low voice, "Ming, what are you doing?" "I'm buying a mouse, but someone doesn't want to give it to me," Fu Ximing said as he glanced at Fujio. "Don't you think it's interesting?" That person laughed, and there was more or less a bit of evil in his voice. "That stupid brother of yours, can he compete with you?" "Old Yuan, give me some rights. We are all gamers. It's not good to give such a good mouse to a layman." Old Yuan was the store manager. Now that he saw that even pro teams had come, he immediately said, "Then let's go to the highest bidder." This was too much of a bully. The pretty boy would definitely be angry. As the salesgirl thought about it, she looked at Fujio with a touch of worry in her eyes. Chapter 65. 10,000. 10,000 yuan to buy a mouse? Isn't it too expensive? The salesgirl's eyes widened. Moreover, this handsome young man had just asked her in a low voice if she had any preferential policies. How did he suddenly become such a nouveau riche? Duze was also stunned. He Honghua was begging everywhere for a loan. Could it be that there was still money left at home? Otherwise, why would this prodigal be so arrogant? Spending 10,000 to buy a mouse was indeed too expensive. Even a pampered young master like Fu Ziming felt the pinch. However, with so many friends watching, and the manager of the Qin Group's club, he couldn't lose face. 11,000. Fu Ziming sneered and raised the price. Who didn't know that he Honghua had no money? You're still pretending, huh? He wanted to see how far this prodigal could go against him. 11,000? Fujio laughed and slowly put down the things in her hands. Boss, you can sell this mouse to this idiot. Spending 10,000 yuan on a mouse. Either he has money to burn, or he's sick in the head. The store manager. Fujio didn't care about other people's reactions. She sucked on another lollipop, smiled evilly, and took out the hard drive under the mouse. Actually, I want this more. Give me 10 with the biggest memory. After all, he wasn't here to buy a mouse, but to buy a hard drive. Then why did he still bid? And he even shouted so high. Could it be? Fu Ziming's fingers tightened, and the words came out one after another. Fu. 9. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I tricked you. Fujio put her silver hair back and smiled fiercely. So what? You. Fu Ziming was so angry that his whole body was trembling. However, he was still rational. He was also thinking about his status at all times. He could not argue with a person who was completely unpresentable on so many occasions. That would only lower his image. Fu Ziming took a deep breath and laughed. It's just 10,000 yuan. I know you can't afford it now, but you're smart enough to think of a backup plan. When my dad and your mom get divorced, let's see how you can still be so arrogant. Facing such a person, Fujio wasn't angry at all. Instead, she curled up her thin lips. Fu Ziming, if I were you, I wouldn't tell everyone that I'm an illegitimate child, or that my mother is a mistress, and that my first wife got divorced. It seems like you aren't ashamed of it, but proud of it? As expected, not everyone in this world can be called human. Fu. 9. Fu Ziming saw that more and more people were gathering around them. His face was livid as he said, Just you wait. When the shop assistant heard this, she understood what was going on. It turned out that this young master was not only bullying people, but he was also occupying Nestle's nest. She hated this kind of person the most. As soon as she saw that Fu Ziming was about to leave, she immediately shouted, Sir, please settle your bill before you leave. You've spent a total of 11,000 yuan. Are you paying by credit card or cash? Fu Ziming took another deep breath and pointed at Duze. Get him to pay. Duze did not expect such an outcome. Not only did he fail to bully that prodigal, he even wasted 111,000 yuan on a mouse that was only worth a few hundred yuan. Most importantly, he was the one who paid for it. What bad luck. What's wrong with this prodigal? Did he become smarter? No, that's impossible. Chapter 66. After getting rid of those annoying scumbags, Fujio was in a better mood than when she first arrived. She curled up the corner of her mouth, lowered her head, and picked out some small parts. She handed them all to the salesgirl and smiled handsomely. That's it. Check out, thank you. The salesgirl took it and gave a 10% discount without hesitation. Her face was still blushing. The beautiful young man's tone was so nice and gentle. She wouldn't get sick of a customer like him, even if there were 100 of them. You don't want a mouse? This question wasn't asked by the salesgirl, but by the man who had just put his arm around Fu Ziming's shoulder. He was wearing a uniform, and the smile on his face wasn't friendly at all. Fujio had one hand in her pocket, and she didn't even look at him. She paid the money, took her things and left. She didn't expect that the man would actually curl his lips, and as he brushed past her, he lightly said, Interesting. Interesting, wasn't it? Fu Ziming's stupid brother used to blush whenever he saw him. But now, it was like he didn't know him at all. The man narrowed his eyes and didn't take Fujio seriously. After all, no matter how much he changed, he was still gay. He didn't want to provoke such a pervert. Once he got attached, he couldn't get rid of him. Even if he was good-looking, he was still disgusting. Boss, come and see. The shop is broadcasting the video of Almighty Qin, and that Spade Z playing games together yesterday. I really envy this guy. In normal competitions, only you can compete with Almighty Qin. But this guy can play games with Almighty Qin. He's so lucky. I asked, and he's not from the Supreme Alliance. I don't know which team he's from. How come he's a newbie? The man followed his teammate's finger and saw the screen full of silver light. He was shocked and couldn't help but spit out 2 words, beautiful. It was really beautiful. Even he couldn't reach that kind of hand speed. This Spadesy. Who the hell was he? 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of people started to enter the Qin group's club. Fujio was among them. The person filling out the form asked, "Do you have a letter of introduction?" Fujio shook her head. "No." The man frowned and pointed to the queue next to him. "Then take your number and wait by the side. When it's your turn, someone will let you in." Fujio didn't say much. She took the number card according to the rules and sat there with her legs crossed. Since she had nothing to do, she began to study the hard drives she bought. She learned how to disassemble and install them, and what kind of casing was needed. It would be best if it was a smaller one, so it would be more effective in disguise. You're also here to sign up for the internal signing?" A bespectacled boy at the side seemed to have mustered up all his courage before he dared to talk to Fujio. Me too. Apparently, the boy could not speak fluently. Fujio smiled, looked up and nodded. The boy was stunned, thinking that this person was really handsome. "You'll definitely pass the interview if you look like this." Listen. I heard them say that Manager Feng cares a lot about looks. You're also very handsome. After Fujio said that, she added with a smile, still very young. Just as the 2 of them were chatting, Fujio's WeChat rang. It was a message from the Almighty, 3 short words. "Have you arrived yet?" Not even a punctuation mark. Chapter 67. In the big office on the top floor of the Qin group, Secretary Liang clearly saw his CEO's fingers suddenly pause while he was texting. That originally indifferent expression seemed to be starting to become not so good. Well, what was going on? Secretary Liang subconsciously thought of online dating. Qin Mo was still looking at that WeChat message, and he raised his eyebrows. "The Qin group is not a place for you to flirt." He sent the message forcefully, and his eyes were cold. "Do you understand?" Fujio looked at the reply and replied coolly with a lollipop in her mouth. "Don't worry, Almighty. No one here is more handsome than you. If I really want to flirt, I will flirt with you. You are a big fish." Big fish? Who would like to be described like that? Did a biology teacher teach this guy Chinese? Qin Mo clenched his fingers, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Secretary Liang stood beside him, and he felt that his CEO was looking at his phone, as if he was looking at a dead thing that was about to die. As a bystander, he couldn't help but tremble from the bottom of his heart. What did those people on WeChat do to piss off the CEO? The CEO was in a good mood this morning, but why did he suddenly cool down? Qin Mo pushed open the door of the conference room with one hand and sent the last WeChat message on his phone screen. Then he raised his head and looked straight at Secretary Liang with a pair of deep, watery eyes. His voice was cold. "Go and inform the team now. In the future, if anyone in the team flirts with someone in the company, I will cut off their salary." "Ah, yes." After Secretary Liang answered, he felt that the notice was a bit strange. Flirting? All the teams were practicing their skills in the game, in order to prepare for the upcoming city war. Everyone had been in the company for a few days. Who would be in the mood to flirt? Besides, how could they flirt with a bunch of young men? Even if they wanted to flirt, they should at least pick a girl, right? At this moment, Fujio was still sitting on the cold bench. She looked at Almighty Qin's message and smiled. Her fingers moved quickly. "You go ahead with the meeting. I'm fine on my side. I should be able to pass." She didn't want to bother the Almighty with trivial matters like the competition. She needed him to earn money, so she couldn't just take him out for a walk. Although the Almighty said that he would come to see her after the meeting. However, Fujio still felt that it was a small competition, and she could win easily. Besides, hadn't that Manager Feng always wanted to poach her? He couldn't let her down. Knowing that the other party didn't have time to reply to her WeChat, Fujio put her phone away and waited quietly for her number to be called. The boy's face turned red. "I don't have eyebrows. I'm very, very ordinary." You'll look better after you take off your glasses. Fujio turned her face, her silver hair shining. Your foundation is there. The boy was a little shy. Thank you. You're welcome. Fujio put the parts into her bag. The boy asked again. Which district are you from? Hero. Zone C. With the lollipop in her mouth, Fujio leaned back casually. Even though she was in a corner, she seemed to be glowing. Area C? The boy suddenly widened his eyes and lowered his voice mysteriously. Then do you know Spade Z from Zone C? Chapter 68. Fujio coughed and didn't say anything. Should she say that she knew or didn't know? The boy's eyes were shining, but he was still stuttering. He's really good. I heard that he will also participate in the internal signing. I really want to see what he looks like in person. Fujio paused and chuckled. Why do you care so much about a newbie? He's not a newbie. The boy's expression became excited. I can see that he's a god. I like him very much. Fujio heard that and raised her arm to pat the boy's shoulder. Thanks. The boy didn't understand. What was there to thank? Just as he was about to think about it, a group of people came out. A group of people walked out. They seemed to have just been reviewed and were led by a manager. Fujio had seen that manager when she bought the hard disk. He was the one who knew Fu Ziming and the others. She narrowed her eyes at the sight. The boy thought that she was interested, so he whispered in her ear. That's Jean, the manager of the club. He's in charge of the first round. Those people who just went out all have recommendation letters. We don't, so we have to be the last to be audited. Manager Lee also saw Fujio. His expression wasn't very good. He raised his wrist and looked at his watch. The rest of you can come in together. Watch carefully, don't break the company's computer. The first round of the club's audit was to test their hand speed. Of course, playing blindly was the most basic. Every player had a nervous look on their faces. Because whether they could be internally signed into the strongest league team in the country depended on today's gamble. The club provided everyone with an account to log into the game. But they didn't log into League of Legends, but QQ Dazzle Dance. It was to test their reaction speed. Fujio thought it was a good method. After all, she liked to do a round of QQ Dazzle Dance to train her fingers when she hacked into the network. So QQ Dazzle Dance was not difficult for her. But Fujio had a habit. She liked to do it on a high difficulty level, so that her fingers could stretch better. The sound of the spacebar on the keyboard rang out, and stopped at the same time in the office. It was very neat. After every round, the computer would show the hand speed of that round. Everyone could play 3 rounds, and the fastest hand speed was chosen. Of course, they could only see their own screens. But they didn't know that there was a freak among them with a hand speed of 90%. That freak was of course Lord Gio. Fujio's hand speed was fixed after playing for a while, so she was the first to stand up, fill in the speed form, and hand it to Manager Lee. Manager Lee looked at him sternly. The test is 3 rounds, take the highest score. It doesn't matter how many rounds I play. Fujio's voice was indifferent. Besides, isn't the result voluntary? Since it is voluntary, taking the first round is not against the rules. Chapter 69. Fujio wasn't annoyed by his words. She just said lightly, Then what do you think we should do? I've already filled in my grades. Take your form back and redo it. Manager Lee didn't even look at him, and just threw Fujio's form at him casually. The boy who had just spoken to Fujio looked at him worriedly. Fujio smiled, and bent down to pick up the form. Only then did the boy calm down. He wanted to quickly pull him over to do another test. But who would have thought that as soon as Fujio straightened her body, she would raise her hand, and use a little force, and the form paper would instantly split in half. At first it was just the sound of typing on a keyboard. But now, under Fujio's influence, everyone stopped what they were doing. The testing room was so quiet that only the sound of paper being torn could be heard. When Fujio tore that form into pieces and put it in front of Manager Lee, she was surrounded by a flood of discussions. However, she acted as if she hadn't heard anything. She placed one hand on the table and lowered her voice. If the Qin Club can hire a manager like you, then I'd rather not play games with this team. Suddenly, the testing room was in an uproar. No one dared to talk to the club manager like that. Did he really not want to be nominated? Manager Lee had never been provoked like this before. He was completely embarrassed. The anger on his face had already burned his eyes. Fine. Very good. You have guts, right? Then take your things and scram. Fujio sneered and didn't say anything else. She took her school bag, hung it on her shoulder, and walked straight out of the testing room. Her back view was unbelievably cool. The boy sat on his seat and looked at his hand speed. Then, he looked at the screenshot of the computer beside him. Finally, he gritted his teeth and ran out with his bag. Wait. After Fujio heard the sound behind her, she turned around and raised her eyebrows. Why did you come out? I saw you leave. I don't want to be there anymore. After the boy finished speaking, he broke into a big smile. Although I really want to enter the Chin Corporation, but for someone like me who can't even speak properly, I'm sure I won't get any training resources in the end. That manager looks very snobbish. I don't like this kind of environment. Playing games is supposed to be happy, right? Fujio touched the bridge of her nose. She couldn't help but feel a little guilty after hearing those words. After all, her original intention in playing games was to make money, and now she was trying to take back He Honghua's company. Compared to this obedient child, her starting point seemed to be too utilitarian. Since we don't need to compete, let's go eat. The boy's face was flushed and he was very handsome. I know that there's a good hot pot restaurant here, so I've always wanted to eat with the people in the game. I didn't expect that my wish would come true so soon. Fujio. Why did she always feel that this obedient baby was very similar to Almighty Chin in some aspects? Was it an illusion? Why were these gods so nice to the people in the game? Let's eat. But I don't have money on me. You treat first, and I'll treat you next time. As Fujio spoke, she raised her hand and put it on the boy's shoulder. This time, the obedient baby's face turned even redder, but he was still very cute. He nodded heavily. I'll treat. That hot pot restaurant is mine. Fujio. Chapter 70. In the business conference room, the atmosphere was as low as ever. The people in the marketing department were still talking about this year's data in a trembling voice. They were afraid that if their CEO wasn't satisfied, he would look at them with his deep eyes. Fortunately, the CEO seemed to be absent-minded today, as if he had something else on his mind. He kept playing with a pure white phone in his hand. CEO Chin, that's about it. The people in the marketing department subconsciously waited to be scolded after they finished talking. Unexpectedly, yes. That's it? Everyone couldn't get used to it. Chinemo didn't pay much attention to it. He just needed to adjust the data. He paid more attention to the time. At this time, that guy's test should be over. When he entered the team, he would keep him by his side, so that he wouldn't flirt with others. Thinking of this, Chinmo's mouth turned up slightly, revealing a faint smile. The senior executives in the meeting were stunned. They stared at the faint smile on their CEO's face, wondering what day it was. The CEO seemed to be in a good mood. After another 10 minutes, Chinemo raised his hand and said calmly, "That's all for today. We'll continue tomorrow." The senior manager of the planning department hadn't submitted the plan yet, but he was still very happy that the CEO made this decision at the last minute. He immediately said happily, Yes. Chinemo was the first to stand up. His legs were perfectly straight in the tailor-made trousers, coupled with his demonic aura. As soon as he walked out of the conference room, everyone felt the pressure on their heads disappear. They couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief and collapse into their chairs. But where was the CEO going at this time? Secretary Liang was by Chinmo's side, holding today's meeting minutes in his hands. CEO Chin, your dinner starts at 7. Isn't it too early for us to go out now? Do you want to take a break first? No, let's go to the club. Chinemo gave the order as soon as he got in the elevator. Their club was right next to the Chin Group building, and it wasn't far. Chinemo didn't tell Fujio that the meeting was over. He wanted to go over. Sometimes it was good to surprise that guy. Secretary Liang was a bit surprised. Go to the club? It seems that there is an internal signing today. CEO Qin wants to go over and have a look? Qin Emo didn't explain further, and just nodded lightly. Secretary Liang paused. Then please wait a moment. The people over there don't know that the president is going. I have to make a call. The contestants who participated in the internal signing this time are all fans of the president. If you go like this, it will cause a sensation. What can a few dozen people do? Qin Emo raised his hand. There was a pure black diamond button on his cuff. Along with his movements, a luxurious light seeped out. His fingertip pressed the elevator button. Secretary Liang had no choice but to put his phone back. It seemed that the CEO had already made up his mind to go there today. Vice Liang was surprised. Among the internal signing participants, the CEO was Qin Mo CEO. Suddenly, Secretary Liang's eyes lit up. The little vixen that the CEO met online was one of the internal sign contestants? That was right. Chapter 71. As soon as Qin Emo entered the club, he saw his silly agent standing on his tiptoes, waiting for someone. Feng Yi was indeed waiting for someone, but the person he was waiting for never showed up. After seeing his almighty, his eyes lit up. CEO, didn't you say that Spadesy would come? Where is he? I've been waiting for him here for a long time, and I had to disguise myself. If the reporters recognized me, they would definitely catch me for an interview. You know, I'm actually very popular. Qin Emo glanced at his head with a hat on, and his voice was indifferent. Is this the result of your disguise? You're just a stupid fisherman? Feng Yi decisively turned his head to ask Secretary Liang. Don't I look good? Secretary Liang blinked. Feng Yi felt that he had enough of his almighty's poisonous tongue. He took off his hat. Even if I don't look good, where's Spadesy? He's doing a test inside. Qin Emo threw down this sentence and walked to the test room. When the people in the club saw his handsome face, they all took a step back and couldn't help but cover their mouths. Almighty Qin actually came. The outside of the club was in an uproar. It was the third round of the test in the test room. This time, they were logged into Hero to test their ability to clear dungeons. They were all using their own accounts. Manager Li was still angry about Fujio's behavior just now. He walked in circles and said coldly, Let me tell you, if you're playing a game, you should have the attitude of playing a game. Don't be like that wastrel who just left. Does he think that the Qin Corporation is a place that anyone can enter? Then you guys. Before he could finish his words, he was shocked by the person standing at the door. See, President. Why is he here? Manager Li looked at that tall and noble figure, and immediately walked up to him. CEO Qin Emo didn't even look at him. He walked in with an indifferent face. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit, looking extremely noble. All the players stopped what they were doing and looked up at him. They couldn't hide their excitement. Almighty Qin. They saw the real Almighty Qin. Qin Mo's fame wasn't just because of his face, but also because of his outstanding maneuvering skills. Needless to say, he wasn't just the Prince Charming in the hearts of women. He was also the hero that many players wanted to follow. Now that he had appeared here, it naturally caused a frenzied reaction. Qin Emo stood there as though there was no one around. His eyes scanned the players inch by inch, and in the end he frowned. Why wasn't he here? Qin Emo lowered his head and glanced at the WeChat message. His number was on it. Number 19. Qin Emo followed the number and saw that the seat in front of the computer was empty. Secretary Liang had been with his young master for a long time, so he quickly understood the meaning of his CEO's gaze. He turned his head and asked, Where's the contestant sitting at machine number 19? As soon as this question came out, the testing room was silent for half a minute. The players looked at each other with an indescribably subtle expression. No one dared to speak. Instead, they secretly glanced in the direction of Manager Li. Manager Li himself was also stunned. After all, he never thought that Secretary Liang would ask about this kind of thing. He was still thinking of an excuse. Qin Emo stood there, his eyes narrowing dangerously. Chapter 72. Manager Li was still pretending. He let out a long sigh and said, What else could it be? Secretary Liang, you don't know. I don't know who recommended this contestant 19 for the in-house signing. He is so unethical and doesn't follow the test rules. I asked him to leave. Suddenly, no one knew why, but the air in the testing room seemed to have frozen because of someone. Secretary Liang raised his head and looked at his CEO. That extraordinarily handsome face was covered with an unprecedented coldness. His voice was also terrifyingly deep, and every word he uttered made people tremble from the bottom of their hearts. You said you let him go. Yes, CEO Qin. Manager Li laughed along. That kind of prodigal is really nothing much. Luckily you didn't meet him. Qin Mo suddenly laughed and walked towards him. He reached out and grabbed Manager Li's collar. His eyes were so cold that they could freeze a person to death. Who do you think you are? How dare you let the contestant go? Be President Qin II. Manager Li still wanted to explain. Feng Yi was even crazier than him. As soon as he heard his almighty's words, the one who left was definitely Spade Z. Spade Z, whom he had tried so hard to poach, had been driven away by this old Li. He couldn't believe his ears. Old Li, why are you doing this? Manager Li knew that he could only pin his hopes on Vice President Feng. He hurriedly said, I asked him to retest his hand speed, but he was unwilling. It was that prodigal who tore up the results sheet. He didn't want to come to our club. Qin Mo didn't believe him at all. He raised his hand and pointed, calling a contestant. Tell me what exactly happened. The contestant didn't expect that his idol would call him. He immediately stood up and said excitedly. Contestant 19 was the first to finish the hand speed test and fill out the form. Manager Li humiliated him and said that he only knew how to show off. He told him not to be so full of himself and to take the test again. When number 19 heard this, he tore the form on the spot. He even said that as long as the club has someone like Manager Li, he won't join Supreme Alliance. The contestant forced himself to finish his sentence because he realized that with every word he said, Almighty Qin's deep eyes would become colder. In the end, it was like a frozen pond. He looked as if he was going to kill someone. Feng Yi was listening from the side. He hadn't expected things to turn out this way. He looked up at Manager Li, his hand trembling. I asked you to watch the test. Did I ask you to cause trouble for me? Qin Mo didn't waste time with anyone. Instead, he grabbed Manager Li's collar and pressed him in front of the computer. He was born in the third generation of the military and had never been gentle. At this moment he displayed his ruthlessness to the extreme. Take a look at his hand speed. People like him have the right to be arrogant. That kind of Qin Mo was simply too terrifying. It lacked the nobility and indifference of the business world. His eyes were bloodthirsty and cold. Manager Li's whole body was trembling. B-Boss Qin, I didn't do it on purpose. I really didn't do it on purpose. Chapter 73. It's me. Qin Mo threw him to the ground after he finished speaking. Manager Li was completely stunned by the two cold words. His eyes shook violently, his face pressed against the computer screen, and just like that he slumped into his seat. Even after Qin Mo left, he didn't come back to his senses. His face was frighteningly pale, because he knew that his future was over. He would be fired immediately without the CEO's order, and he wouldn't even be able to survive in Jiang City. Why? Why was that wastrel introduced by CEO Qin? At the same time, Fujio's hand speed was also displayed on the computers of all the contestants. Looking at that result, everyone who knew about games was stunned. And then there was an unbelievable uproar. More than 90%. At this moment, everyone was silent. Shock, and astonishment swept through the entire testing room. That kind of hand speed was something they couldn't achieve, even if they practiced for a lifetime. Who on earth was this contestant 19? Everyone was asking, and everyone was curious. But his information had already been torn up and thrown into the dustbin. What a slap to the face. Qin Mo strode forward. That extremely cold back made Secretary Liang and Feng Yi pale with fear. Especially Feng Yi. He was in charge of this internal drawing. Who knew that his people would directly reject Spadesy, who was poached by the CEO. Not only would the CEO be angry, but he also wanted to kill that bastard Oldly right now. Secretary Liang didn't dare to remind their CEO about the afternoon dinner. So he shrunk his neck and pretended to be invisible. Suddenly, Chinemo stopped, took out his phone, and pressed the screen with his fingertips. He tilted his handsome face slightly. "Where are you?" 3 simple words. Did it look like a WeChat message? Secretary Liang and Feng Yi looked at each other. The person who could make the CEO send a WeChat message at this time. That little devil, Spadesy. At this moment, Fujio was still looking at the hot pot restaurant that the boy mentioned. She raised her eyebrows. "Is this the ordinary hot pot restaurant you mentioned?" It was the only Michelin-starred restaurant in the 3 northeastern provinces. Apart from being rich, one had to be powerful to eat there. Ordinary hot pot restaurant. There were less than 10 of them in the whole world. The boy laughed and scratched his head. What do you want to eat?" "I'll ask them to get it for you." "Meat, I'm a pure meat eater." Fujio didn't even look at the menu. She just sat there devilishly and smiled charmingly. "I didn't expect to pick up a rich second generation in a competition." The boy began to stutter again. No, I don't have any money. However, I can only treat you to hot pot. In the future, when I earn money, I'll treat you to something else." "So cute?" Fujio winked and smiled, exuding a seductive aura. Boom. The boy blushed again. Do you always talk like this?" "What?" Fujio lowered her eyes and started to mix the sauce when she saw the soup being served. The boy pushed up his glasses. "Yes, it's been discharging electricity. That's how handsome you are." Fujio rested one hand on the back of the chair. Her silver hair and black eyes made her look devilish. The boy was stunned for a moment before he smiled. That's right. Wait, is your phone ringing?" "Phone?" Fujio turned sideways and took out her phone from her pocket with one hand. Seeing that it was a WeChat message from Almighty Qin, she held a chopstick in her mouth and replied. Chapter 74. At the Qin Group Club, that slender figure that could gather all the dazzling lights had already walked in. Other than the contestants who wanted to see their Almighty Qin, even the media set up their cameras. All of this was proof of Qin Mo's popularity. He wasn't in the entertainment circle, but he was more famous than a superstar. Other than Qin Mo, no one else could achieve this effect. It was as if it was that kind of natural arrogance that made him so popular that when he appeared, people would cover their mouths and scream. However, Feng Yi and Secretary Liang, knew that their CEO was almost frozen to death, especially when he looked at his phone screen. He didn't know what the other party had sent to CEO Qin, but his eyes turned completely cold. Fujio didn't think there was anything wrong with her WeChat message. She sent a few more words over. "Are you hungry? If you are, come over together. The hot pot restaurant is not bad. And the little handsome guy is cute." This guy really needed to be taught a lesson. Chinemo stood there with his fingers paused. He wanted to take a deep breath, but there were so many people here that he couldn't even take a deep breath. He said stiffly, "Address." Fujio blinked. Why did Almighty Qin's tone sound a bit cold? Was he angry again? She didn't flirt with him, so why was he angry again? Fujio sat at the dining table with her left hand supporting her chin. She was casually typing the address with the other hand. After Chinemo saw it, he frowned and ordered Secretary Liang to get the car ready. Secretary Liang listened to the address. Wasn't this the place where CEO Qin had his business meeting tonight? CEO Qin, should we go there now? Was it too early? It wasn't even time for dinner yet. Chinemo didn't say anything. He took the car keys from his hand and sat in the driver's seat. He didn't want to bring anyone along. Before Secretary Liang could ask anything else, he saw their CEO's slender fingers grip the steering wheel. His dark hair fell down and covered his deep eyes. With a beautiful drift, the limited edition sports car with smooth lines drove into the North Road with a whistling sound. The president didn't look like he was going to a restaurant. Instead, he looked like he was going to seek revenge. At this moment, Fujio was still drinking her tea lazily. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be shining as she looked at the boy very beautifully. "A friend is coming over to eat with us later. He's also someone I know from the game. You don't mind, do you?" "No, I don't mind." The boy's stuttering problem was still there. I'll ask them to add another set of cutlery." We've chatted for so long. But I still don't know your name? Hearing that, Fujio raised her hand and smiled. Fujio. Good name. The boy probably thought about it for a long time before he could think of such a compliment. With a red face he said, My real name is Feng Shang. In the game, it's called awarding you a slap of pleasure. Pooh! Even someone as cool as Fujio couldn't help but spit at the name of the game. It wasn't only because the name of the player was funny, but also because the player's in-game name was indeed a famous person and hero. His maneuvers were awesome, and he had a lot of money. The only thing was that this guy was a chatterbox. Whenever he met a girl, he would say, Girl, want to play with Uncle? Uncle will play games with you and fly with you. Chapter 75. Feng Shang knew why Fujio reacted this way. He scratched his cheeks in embarrassment, and even his ears were red. You probably think I'm different from how I am in the game. So you'll get used to it. My brother gave me a lot of money to play, but he didn't give me any cash. So I can only eat hot pot in my own restaurant. You're the first person who won't laugh at me for stuttering. So, I really want to teach you, my friend. Fujio raised her eyebrows and her eyes flashed. Your brother? Your brother is Feng Yi? After all, the surname Feng was rare in Jiang City. The well-behaved boy nodded and asked, What's your name in the game? So we can play together in the game. So, you can take me to dungeons and fly me? Fujio teased him with a smile. This was his famous saying. Hearing that, Feng Shang's face turned completely red. Fujio didn't want to tease him too much. After all, he wasn't Almighty Qin, who could be cold in the face of everything. She thought for a moment, put down her chopsticks and looked at Feng Shang. I didn't have time to tell you at the club, but I'm actually Spadesy. Feng Shang froze. Then he pointed at her with his left hand and stuttered. You, how can you be Spadesy? My code name is Z. Fujio said something that was unclear. Feng Shang didn't understand, but Spadesy. He said he was Spadesy. The idol he wanted to see the most, Spadesy. Feng Shang didn't know what to say, so he looked up and said, Idol, let me calm down first. Fujio laughed. You're not stuttering anymore? Feng Shang also realized that he spoke very fluently just now, but he was still shocked. Then, he seemed to think of something and said, That snobbish manager must be regretting it now. I saw you and young Master Qin playing together, and he dared to treat you like that. Young Master Qin will definitely make him pay. Don't talk about me. What about you? Why didn't you tell that manager that you are Manager Feng's younger brother? Fujio curled up her lips slightly. That way, he wouldn't need to take the test to sign the contract. Feng Shang froze for a moment, then lowered his voice. I'm not suited to be a pro player. I stutter. No, I don't want to rely on my brother's connections to get in. I want to see my own true strength. If that's the case, are you interested in forming a team with me? Fujio supported her chin with her fingers, looked up at Feng Shang, and said evilly, Let those people have an eye-opener? Feng Shang was startled. Looking at the handsome face in front of him that could mesmerize countless girls, his eyes lit up. How can I widen their horizons? In 10 days, it'll be the official esports preliminaries. The Qin Corporation will also sign their official members here. When the time comes, we'll team up and kill them. What do you think? Fujio put her hand on Feng Shang's shoulder in a very beautiful posture. Her fair skin was glowing, and the corner of her mouth had a unique ruthlessness. A strand of silver hair fell down and blocked her eyes, making it difficult to see her face. But even so, that kind of posture was enough to make people's blood boil. Okay. The well-behaved child held Fujio's hand, looking like a hero who was about to make a pledge of blood. This was the scene Qinemo saw when he walked in. Chapter 76. CEO Qin. The waiter looked at the man's face carefully, and his voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. Qinemo looked at the two people in front of him. Their straight backs were like the pine trees in the mountains, making people feel cold. His eyes were narrowed dangerously, and they were as cold as an ancient deep pool. The waiter wanted to say something, But he saw that the noble man in front of him had already walked to the window and grabbed the silver-haired youngster's collar. Bang! Fujio was caught off guard. She turned around, and her face was almost buried in Chin Mo's chest. The cool peppermint scent spread into her nose through the hardness of his suit. She didn't need to guess to know that Almighty Chin was here. Only this man liked to grab her collar. Fujio looked up and saw him looking down at her. His eyes were like a deep well, indifferent and noble beyond belief. Those claws of yours are for dungeons, not for flirting with men. Chin-mo pinched Fujio's back, and his voice was sexy and bewitching. If I see you flirting with anyone again, I'll break your hands. That would save me some trouble. Fujio raised her eyebrows. I'm not flirting. We are in the alliance. And Almighty Chin, you care about me so much. Is it because? She smiled slowly as she said this. She leaned over and whispered in his ear slowly. Are you jealous? Every man's ear was untouchable. Even if Chin-mo was abstinent, he was still a normal man. What he couldn't tolerate was being blown on like this. Looking at that face that made one's teeth itch, the youngster's smooth and tender face with the scent of youth candy, it was a very likable face, but he wanted to pinch it to death every time. Fujio smiled and moved closer. Did I guess it right? When she moved away from him, her face brushed past his, and her pale lips were about to touch his ear. Fujio. Chin-mo pulled forcefully and threw her back onto the seat. His cold, thin lips were pressed into a straight line, and his fists were clenched tightly. His voice was icy cold. Stay away from me when you speak. I'm not gay. I won't be jealous of you. Sit down and enjoy your hot pot. Chin-mo was speechless when he heard Chin-mo's words. You'd better stay away from me. Fujio touched the bridge of her nose. Are you really angry? Did he go to find me after the meeting, only to find that I wasn't there? So he got angry? You can't blame me. That manager of yours is really too troublesome. With my bad temper, do you think I can tolerate it? The only reason I didn't beat him up was because he was on your turf. Does that mean I have to thank you? Chin-mo's voice turned colder. Feng Shang was dumbfounded. After all, he had seen young Master Chin a few times, but he had never seen him treat anyone like this. He didn't look like he really wanted to deal with his idol, but his eyes showed that he really wanted to break his idol's neck. But what did his idol just do? He almost kissed young Master Chin's ear. Was he looking for death? As his idol's new comrade, he had to say something for his idol, or else young Master Chin would really ban his idol. Young Master Chin, this really isn't Jojo's fault. That managerly obviously didn't like him, so he told Jojo to get lost. Chapter 77. It was a nice word, but when Almighty Chin said it, it brought a chill that made people shiver from the bottom of their hearts. The air around them seemed to be frozen, and all the waiters didn't dare to look at him. Young Master Chin, who had power over 3 provinces, was really not someone to be messed with. They also hoped that second young master would shut up and stop talking, or even young Master Chin wouldn't be able to save second young master. Feng Shang did shut up, and his head was about to drop to the ground. Wasn't Jojo a good name? Why did young Master Chin's eyes look colder than before? Fujio knew where the problem was. After all, if it were him, he would be in a bad mood when he found out that his friend was gone. In fact, Almighty Chin thought highly of her, or he wouldn't have gone to the club to find her right after the meeting. Almighty Chin could have sent his secretary, and he didn't have to go himself. Thinking of this, Fujio put down her chopsticks, looked up at Chin-mo and sighed. You didn't give me a letter of introduction, and that manager's words were too harsh, so I had to leave. Hearing the youngster's low voice, the coldness in Chin-mo's eyes gradually disappeared. He did forget to give this guy a letter of introduction, and he thought that nothing would go wrong with Feng Yi around. Thinking of this, Chin-mo took another look at the youngster with his head down and chopsticks in his hands. He frowned, and an inexplicable sense of guilt rose in his heart. So let's not talk about the past. Sit down and eat hot pot. Fujio reached out and grabbed Chin-mo's arm. With the Almighty here, the food would definitely be able to keep up, and they could order a few more plates of meat. Chinemo didn't expect the youngster to suddenly do this, and before he could react, he was dragged to a chair by the youngster. Their shoulders were still touching, and the distance between them was so close that he could clearly see the fine hair on the youngster's white cheeks if he tilted his head. This kind of closeness made him a little uncomfortable. He frowned, sat up straight, and said in a low voice, "That manager, I've taken care of it for you. Come back to the Chin group with me after dinner." "Almighty, we are brothers." Fujio scooped up the tender beef without looking up. She had an evil smile on her face. "I'm someone who cares about my reputation. Think about it. If you were humiliated like that, would you go back just like that?" When Chinemo heard the word humiliate, his fingers paused. He hadn't considered this point. When he saw the youngster pick up a piece of beef for him with his chopsticks, Chinemo's beautiful brows furrowed even tighter. Since when did he become considerate of others? Was it because the youngster's expression was pleasing to the eye? Or was it because of the word friend? He didn't forget that he wanted to crush this guy to death just now. It also saved him the trouble of always doing things that challenged his patience. However, in the end, this matter was indeed a problem on his side. Feng Shang, who was on the side, was very restless. His eyes were only focused on young Master Qin's expression. He saw that young Master Qin was staring at Fujio coldly, and his eyes even darkened. Could it be that he hated his idol so much that he was trying to blacklist him? No, he had to save his idol. The obedient Feng Shang took a deep breath and braced himself to speak again. Chapter 78. Hearing that, Feng Shang's back stiffened, and his stuttering voice became more anxious. Young Master Qin, don't tell my brother about this. He will use his connections for me if he knows. Seems like he doesn't know. Chinemo wiped the corner of his mouth slowly. The smile on the corner of his mouth was like a knife being sliced into pieces. Feng Shang always blushed, and now he was so anxious that he wanted to explain clearly. Fujio swallowed the beef and said, "Almighty, don't bully him. He's my teammate now." "I'm not the only teammate you have." Chinemo lifted the corner of his eyes and leaned back. He threw the car keys in his hand onto the table, which made a loud crackling sound. Fujio paused, then suddenly laughed. She raised her left hand and put it on Chinemo's shoulder, looking like a playboy. "Are you jealous? Don't worry, Almighty. There are only two of us in the game, and we are strong partners." Chinemo curled up the corner of his mouth, twisted his hand away, and said coldly, "If you can't change your bad habit of hitting others, I will eat 20 plates of beef today." Eat again? She took a whole day to digest the 20 lobsters last time. Eating was a small matter, but the main thing was to pay the bill. Fujio smiled and let go of his hand. "That's because we have a good relationship. Really don't bully Feng Shang. Why are you so protective of him?" Chinemo's eyes were a little low. Fujio said frankly, "I want to take him to the esports competition next month. It's the only way to enter the team. I can take you there, but you don't want to go. You want to participate in the competition." Chinemo looked up at the young man, reached out his finger, and flicked the tip of his nose. He smiled coldly. "Stay away from me. Don't talk about the only way, and don't flirt with me all the time. Tell the truth, it's good for you." Fujio laughed. "To be honest, after today's humiliation, I don't think it's my style to quietly enter the Qin group. If I don't do something big, I will lose face." "Lose face? I think you want to slap someone's face." Chinemo lifted his lids and took out a cigarette. He held it between his lips and said faintly, "Did San make you angry again?" Fujio narrowed her beautiful eyes. "I didn't expect the Almighty to use the adjective 3. However, I haven't seen San recently, but I bumped into San's son. Didn't I go to the computer city to buy equipment today? I saw a mouse model that you used before. He bullied me because I was poor and didn't have money, so he snatched my mouse. At that time, the manager of your club was also there. I think he didn't like me at that time, so he made things difficult for me during the test. It was clearly Lord Jiao who had tricked Fu Ziming, but in her mouth, it was Fu Ziming who had stolen her mouse. I have to say, when it comes to enemies, our Lord Jiao is so capricious and unprincipled." When Feng Shang heard this, he finally interrupted. I don't have money either. I can understand the feeling of being bullied. Fujio high-fived him. The two of them were like brothers in hardship. Feng Shang comforted her. Idol, I can give you my mouse. There's no need. Tonight, I'll clear a dungeon with the Almighty and earn some money, Fujio said as she stuffed a mouthful of beef into her mouth. She was eating spicy pot, and her lips turned brighter. Chapter 79. After finishing the delicious hot pot, Fujio wanted to say goodbye to Almighty Qin and go home to install her minigame. Although she didn't have all the parts she bought, she could still assemble the interior. She didn't expect that Almighty Qin would ask her to stay. I have a dinner here later. Come with me, and I'll send you home after eating. Fujio was about to refuse. Almighty Qin said calmly, I'll play the game with you after eating. Did he mean that if she didn't eat, she wouldn't play the game with him? But she had just finished the hot pot, and now, as if reading her mind, Qin Mo flicked the cigarette butt on his finger and continued. I'll leave after a few sips of wine. You don't have to force it on me. Actually, I can still eat another plate of beef. Fujio held her chin and smiled. I'll keep you company. Qin Mo didn't say anything else, but Feng Shang was watching from the side. He felt that young Master Qin's face had finally eased up since he came in. It wasn't good for Feng Shang to stay here, because he was worried that his brother would come and find out that he had secretly participated in the competition. Speaking of the competition, Feng Shang still had a few questions to ask Fujio. Idol, who are the other 3 members of our team? Can you tell me their in-game names? I'll give them gold coins. Fujio was very satisfied that she had hooked up with such a good teammate. But the current members of the team? Fujio paused. Feng Shang sat up straight and waited for Fujio's next words with bright eyes. Only you and me. Fujio's hammer fell, and she was still as evil as before. Are you proud to be a veteran member? Even the well-behaved Feng Shang couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard this. So they didn't even have a team. Why did he feel like he was cheated by his idol? I'm here, aren't I? Fujio was about to pat Feng Shang's shoulder. Suddenly, Almighty Qin raised his hand and blocked the guy's movement. His gaze deepened as he tapped the lighter on his fair wrist. Your claws. Was he really going to take care of her? Fujio pouted her pretty thin lips and retracted her hand disinterestedly. Anyway, baby Shang, don't worry. We won't have to worry about not having anyone to fight with. Feng Shang thought about his idol's abilities in the game and relaxed a little. But who the hell was Baby Shang? Baby Shang felt bitter in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. Moreover, being recruited by his idol was indeed a blessing. Even if it wasn't on a large scale now, he believed that they would definitely become popular in the future. Furthermore, his idol had said that he would bring him along to fight for first place. If he really didn't have any teammates, he would use the game's gold coins to buy 3 to join the party. He had plenty of money in the game anyway. Thinking of this, Feng Shang stood up reluctantly. Then I'll leave first, idol. I'll go home and change my equipment. After all, I have to follow my idol and conquer the world. You and young Master Qin, socialize first. All right. Fujio lifted her lips, and her eyes reflected the light. It was very beautiful. Looking at his idol, Feng Shang's handsome face started to turn red again. He thought about it and decided to give his idol some advice, so he secretly tugged at the corner of Fujio's shirt. He didn't expect that his action would make that young Master Qin look at him. He just looked at him. His handsome godlike face was slightly tilted, and his phoenix eyes were half raised. His eyes were clearly curved into a faint smile, but they were cold and sinister. Chapter 80. Feng Shang finally understood why his elder brother, a smart and capable person, was so timid in front of young Master Qin. He was clearly a manager, but he couldn't even control the Almighty under him. So, apart from the fact that young Master Qin was the CEO of the corporation, his gaze could really kill people. The obedient Feng Shang shrunk his neck and swallowed back the warning he wanted to give his idol. Fujio noticed that she was still tugging at her, so she turned around and looked at her. What's wrong? No, nothing. Feng Shang's stuttering couldn't be changed. Gio, I'll be leaving first. Why if you don't have anything else to do? You should go home early and log in. Don't provoke young Master Qin. It was a tiger. His idol was so smart he should know this too, right? But the main thing was, judging from his idol's reaction just now, it didn't seem like he knew about this. Fujio, on the other hand, was full. She looked a little like a careless cat. She waved her hand, looking as handsome as ever. You go first. I'll carry you in the game after I finish eating here. Okay. Feng Shang blushed again. He really thought that his idol was good-looking. He didn't want to leave, but he couldn't resist the coldness emanating from Almighty Qin. After thinking for a while, he left the hot pot restaurant while looking back repeatedly. He was the one who asked out with his idol, but in the end, he was the one who had to leave. He wanted to go home with his idol and let his idol see the equipment he had bought in-game. Almighty Qin was robbing her of her love. Thinking of this, Baby Shang felt a little emotional, but he did not dare to say it. He secretly decided to hook up with more girls in the game today. After Feng Shang left, Qin Emo retracted his gaze. His voice was still calm. If you don't want Feng Yi to know that his brother is participating in the esports competition, stay away from him. It's the same in the game. Got it? Fujio stretched her back and agreed, but she might not actually do it. The two of them sat on one side. Sunlight shone in from the outside and shone on the young man's clean and delicate side profile through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Qin Emo stood up with the car key in his hand and raised his eyebrows at Fujio. Get up. Where are you going? Fujio was confused. Didn't they say that there would be a dinner party later? Almighty Qin was still cold and aloof. No emotions could be seen on his face. There's still some time before the meal starts. Go and digest the food first. Is racing to aid digestion? Fujio followed Almighty Qin down, and the first thing she saw was that top-end limited edition sports car with charming lines. It was painted in pure black, but the tires had a hint of red. This kind of car had great performance, and the starting price was estimated to be over 80. Like, Qin Emo watched as the youngster's eyes lit up. He pressed the unlock button. The receptionist immediately stepped forward and opened the door for him. Fujio thought about it. Generally speaking, at this point in the novel, if she said that she liked it, the Almighty would definitely say that he would give it to her immediately. After all those gold coins and diamonds from before, right? 999999. Almighty Qin gave it away with a wave of his hand. Therefore, Fujio said seriously, I like it very much, just like the lobsters. Give me 20 of them. I won't complain. Chapter 81. Fujio. Almighty, you don't follow the plot of a novel. It's hard, you know. Qin Emo looked at the young man's slightly depressed expression, and his thin lips curled up into a faint smile. He grabbed Fujio by the back of her collar and shoved her into the passenger seat. When the car started to move, it was even cooler than it looked, especially when there were two equally outstanding people sitting inside. Fujio's silver hair was blown into a mess by the wind coming in from the car window, and she looked indescribably cool. Such a handsome face and luxurious style. When the beautiful car glided through the city center, people thought it was two superstars shooting a movie. That scene attracted many people to stop and take pictures while the sports car was waiting for the traffic light. However, Qin Mo's right hand was holding the steering wheel, and his noble and indifferent side profile was almost as fast as the car flashed by, stopping at the entrance of Computer City. Fujio looked at that place and couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. Qin Emo stood there tall and handsome. There weren't many people in the store, but everyone who entered the store was looking in Fujio's direction. To be precise, they were all looking at Almighty Qin. After all, this wasn't the outside world, but a place frequented by people who liked to play games. Qin Emo was recognized by his potential fans as soon as he entered the store. It's Almighty Qin. Is he here to buy accessories too? I didn't expect to see Almighty Qin here. Most of the people who came to buy equipment were boys, and they weren't as crazy as girls. But because of Qin Mo's popularity, It still caused quite a stir. When the store manager heard that Almighty Chin was here, he immediately strode over, not daring to be negligent. After all, for businessmen like them, Chin Mo was not only an esports almighty, but also a young Master Chin, who could shake the entire Jiang city with the stomp of his feet. The store manager's face was full of smiles. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Fu Jiu standing beside Chin Mo. The mouse snatching incident happened not long ago. The store manager naturally had an impression of it, especially Fu Jiu's cool silver hair and handsome face. It was hard to forget, but he never expected that this young man would appear with Almighty Chin. The store manager's heart skipped a beat, and his voice shrank a little. Young Master Chin. Chin Mo glanced at the store manager, his tone cold and concise. Which mouse did he see in the afternoon? Take it out. There weren't many words, but the store manager cleared his throat with difficulty. Young Master Chin, we only have one mouse in the store. After it was taken away at noon, we're out of stock. I'll arrange for someone to get the goods, but I'll have to trouble young Master Chin to wait for a while. By the time the manager reached the end of his sentence, he didn't dare to look at Chin Mo's face anymore. Chin Mo's strong aura made him almost unable to lift his head. Chin Mo's voice was still calm. He pointed at Fu Jiu and said to the store manager, "Remember this face. In the future, give him whatever he wants." Yes. The store manager knew that Chairman Chin was here to get back at him. He was glad that he didn't go too far at noon. Otherwise, according to Chairman Chin's style, he wouldn't have let him off so easily. He would have destroyed his store. Chapter 82. Fu Jiu was actually a little surprised. She thought that the digestion the man was talking about was nothing more than racing and enjoying the wind. Now it seemed like. Fu Jiu looked up and smiled at Chin Mo. She didn't expect the Almighty to have such a good understanding of his friends. When Chin Mo turned his head, he saw the youngster looking at him. He arched a brow and tugged the back of his collar. Which one do you like? Pick one. Almighty, there's really no one who would like to be carried around by you like this. As Fu Jiu spoke, she adjusted her collar, still looking handsome and naughty. She turned sideways and said with an evil smile, "If you touch me again, I will think that you are secretly in love with me." Chin Mo was no longer someone who would get angry over such words. He patted the back of the youngster's head and smiled coldly. "Shut up and pick your stuff." It was the first time in Fu Jiu's life that someone had slapped the back of her head. She was caught off guard, and her handsome face was buried in her collar. Since he had brought her here to seek revenge, she couldn't fight back. She just thought that for this, she would have to cheat more from the man later. Almighty Chin didn't care about spending money. Seeing the young man cover the back of his head with one hand after he patted him, and with a face full of unwillingness, the corners of Almighty Chin's mouth subconsciously curved upwards, and his mood improved quite a bit. Fu Jiu could tell that Almighty Chin's hobby now was to bully her. To be honest, before she met Almighty Chin, she just thought this man wasn't easy to deal with. After interacting with him, she realized that this man was a black-hearted person. How could normal people find bullying their friends fun? Almighty Chin was the only one in the entire world. With Chin Mo's popularity, he couldn't stay in Computer City for long. Fu Jiu was also looking at the time. She quickly picked out a bunch of internal parts and a very small outer shell. When she said that she only wanted the shell, the store manager looked at her in surprise. Are you sure you want to buy it this way? What could these scattered things do? Why don't you just buy the finished product? Fu Jiu smiled. Yes, she had to get a better one, so that she could type in class without worry. Chin Mo was sitting next to her with his long legs crossed. He was reading an esports magazine. When he heard this, he lifted his eyes towards Fu Jiu. His eyes were as deep as an ancient lake. They looked calm, but there were many secrets hidden in them. Fu Jiu also noticed that Chin Mo was looking at her. The man already knew that she was a hacker, so there was nothing to hide. She turned her head and smiled at him. "I want to make my own laptop." Chin Mo raised his eyebrows and walked over. His slender fingers picked at the pile of spare parts. His businessman nature didn't change. "The hard drive here won't do. I have one with me." I'll give it to you when you enter the Qin group. In other words, if she didn't enter the Qin group, she wouldn't even be able to think about it. Inexplicably, Fu Jiu understood the hidden meaning in the Almighty's words. What about these things today? If you don't join the Qin group after the competition, you'll have to refund me the original price. As Qin Mo said this, he threw the bag of stuff into the young man's arms. He put one hand in his trouser pocket and smiled faintly. Seeing this, Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. What digestion? It was just a trick he came up with to enslave her better in the future. Chapter 83. Forget it. The Almighty wasn't just shameless for a day or two anyway. These pieces of hardware were really great. The main thing was that she had regained her pride. Fu Jiu curled up her lips and took a step forward. She raised her hand and wanted to put it on the man's shoulder to tease him again. Unexpectedly, Qin Mo's reaction was surprisingly fast this time. Before she could put her hand on his shoulder, he grabbed her wrist and turned around to press her against the wall. His breath was cold. You don't want your claws anymore? Fu Jiu was still smiling, and her eyes were shining. Almighty Qin, I realized that your ears are very fragile. There were a lot of group owners watching from the side, and everyone who saw this scene couldn't help but widen their eyes. Especially the store manager, who was watching from the side, was trembling. What the hell was going on? They had never heard of young Master Qin having this kind of taste, silver-haired handsome young man. Did the Qin family know about this? The geeks who were buying equipment were also watching, secretly swallowing their saliva. They really wanted to take pictures but didn't dare to. No one dared to mess with Almighty Qin's power. But that kind of posture really made people think the wrong way. Plus, both of their faces were ridiculously good-looking. Both of them seemed to be exuding hormones all the time. So it was inevitable that people would think in that direction. Fu Jiu didn't think much of it, but it was really not good to be pressed against the wall like that. Looking at that handsome face right in front of her, her smile became wider, and she turned her head. Seeing that the young man was going to blow at him again, Qin Mo used force again and pressed him back against the wall. The light in the bottom of his eyes released a charming color. Fu Jiu. It was probably because the young man's face was too young and too small. He couldn't bear to do it, so he pinched him hard. But in order to teach the young man a lesson, Qin Mo still took action. He leaned over domineeringly, and his thin lips were close to the left ear with the black stud. His warm breath matched with his handsome and unruly side profile, giving people an indescribable feeling of ambiguity. But his voice was cold, and it was heavy on the ear, making people feel numb. Big brother, as an experienced person, let me tell you, don't blow at a man's ear casually in the future, understand? With that, Qin Mo straightened his back. He didn't understand how this guy could remain indifferent when he was flirting with someone. It was just that when he saw the porcelain jade white ear, the round and exquisite earlobe, he actually had an urge to play with it. She must have been angered by this fellow, who flirted with her regardless of the situation. Even he was affected by it. However, a certain someone still had an evil smile on her face. She didn't seem to be shocked at all. Her beautiful eyes narrowed. Brother? Qin Mo arched a brow and adjusted his tie, looking very restrained. I'm older than you. If I don't call you brother, what should I call you? That was true. But if she took Almighty Qin as her brother, it would be a little stressful. After all, Almighty Qin looked like a profiteer from the beginning. If he tricked her again and made her sign a contract to sell herself or something, Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. The loss outweighed the gain. Seeing that the youngster was still contemplating, Qin Mo was instantly infuriated. His voice turned cold. What? Is it wrong for you to call me big brother? Of course not. Fu Jiu curled her lips into a smile. But if Brother Mo is a brother complex, that would be even better. Chapter 84. 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Before there was a traffic jam, Fu Jiu and Qin Mo went back to that Michelin restaurant after buying the spare parts. Secretary Liang was already waiting there. He stood at the door in a well-ironed suit, looking at the time from time to time. It wasn't until he saw his CEO's smooth black sports car that he let out a sigh of relief. But the next moment, Secretary Liang's eyes widened. He actually saw someone in the passenger seat of CEO Qin. When Chairman Qin was driving, he rarely let anyone sit next to him. Who was that person? Secretary Liang took another step forward to take a closer look. But in the end, what surprised him was that he had actually seen that person before. Wasn't that the useless young master of the Fu family that CEO Qin met on his way to school? Secretary Liang couldn't be blamed for calling Fujio like that. In fact, as the Fu family's business got bigger and bigger, Fujio's reputation got worse and worse. It wasn't the first time that Secretary Liang had heard of Fujio's name. In Jiang City, anyone from the upper class would sneer when they saw him. How many nightclubs had set him as a no customer? Especially those elegant places. People would simply shake their heads at the mention of his name. Plus, after what happened this time, it seemed like many people were waiting to see He Honghua and her useless son make a fool out of themselves. Although these weren't the main point, how could CEO be with such a person? Thinking about the few friends next to the president, almost all of them came from the military compound. They were either politicians or soldiers. Which one of them wasn't a famous person? But this one. Secretary Liang watched his CEO take the bag from the young man's hand and throw it into the back seat casually. He seemed to be saying, "I'll drive you back later, why are you still taking it?" Or something along those lines. Secretary Liang thought that he was either asleep, or there was something wrong with his eyes or ears. CEO Qin. He called out to Qin Mo, but his eyes fell on the young man. As smart as Fujio was, of course, she noticed that Secretary Liang was sizing her up. She didn't say anything and just smiled lightly. Her silver hair and black eyes carried a faint air of nobility. Secretary Liang was shocked. When he met young Master Fu in the past, he wasn't like this. Young Master Fu acted like a nouveau riche and didn't know how to restrain himself. Why did he look so elegant today? However, Secretary Liang was a man of action. He wouldn't say things that weren't meant to be said. Instead, he said to Qin Mo respectfully, "CEO Qin, Boss Li and Boss Zhang are already waiting inside. Would your friend first?" "He's going up too," Qin Mo said faintly. Fujio hooked up her lips at him. Secretary Liang watched as the two people walked into the restaurant side by side. He was shocked again. Even though this dinner party was set up by Boss Li and Boss Zhang to curry favor with their Boss Qin, Boss Qin was not the only one. But did this young Master Fu have the right to sit at such a table? It wasn't that Secretary Liang looked down on Fujio, he just found it weird. Since when did their CEO become so close to that disgraced young master of the Fu family? This was the biggest contrast in the upper circle of Rivertown. Chapter 85. When Boss Li and Boss Zhang saw young Master Qin come in with a young man, they were shocked and stood up immediately. "Have a seat." Qin Mo's voice was still light, but it was very effective. He found a seat and let Fujio sit next to him. He loosened his tie, and his side profile was handsome. "Have you ordered?" Boss Li smiled. "Not yet, we are all waiting for you, young Master Qin." As he said this, he glanced at the waiter next to him. The waiter immediately brought up the menu. Secretary Liang took it and put it in front of Qin Mo. Then he looked down at their CEO, who was choosing two dishes with a scrutinizing look. Secretary Liang's eyes widened when he saw the word tripe. Their CEO never ate this kind of food, saying it was dirty and unhygienic. But today, and he even ordered peeing beef meatballs? Who said he didn't eat processed meat? Could it be that all these things were chosen according to that useless young Master Fu's taste? Secretary Liang was shocked by his own horrifying conclusion. No, it can't be like that. He must have been so shocked when he saw Fujio get out of his CEO's car that he thought so much. How could the CEO? "See if this is enough. If not, you can add more," Qin Mo said as he tilted his head and lit a cigarette. His nobility as the young master of Jiang City was undeniable. Secretary Liang could only feel his ears ringing. The CEO. He really chose according to the youngster's taste. Fujio looked over, and her shoulder brushed against Qin Mo's. They looked at the same menu, and Fujio smiled. Add a lettuce. Hearing this, Chinemo picked up a pencil and ticked it casually. When Boss Lee and Boss Zhang saw this, they felt that young Master Qin treated this young man differently. They looked at each other immediately, and had a plan in mind. Young Master Qin, this is. Chinemo held a cigarette, and threw out 3 words with his nose straight. My little brother. Little brother? When did young Master Qin have a little brother? He had never heard that the Qin family had other sons besides young Master Qin. Secretary Liang was still drinking tea, and he choked and coughed when he heard the words, my little brother. CEO Qin, did you ask boss and madam about this? Chinemo glanced at him faintly, slowly puffing out a smoke ring. My brother. Hearing this, Boss Lee immediately replied. Young Master Qin must have something special about him for young Master Qin to recognize him as his god brother. How should I address this young master? And what does his family do? My surname is Fu. Fujio picked up the teacup and smiled faintly. I haven't been involved in the family business, but I'm planning to take it over. When Mr. Zhang heard the word Fu and looked at him, he suddenly thought of something. Could it be that the Fu family? I saw your father at the business salon last time. Now the Fu family's business is getting bigger and bigger. Not bad, not bad. I heard that young Master Fu is also good at games, and has caught the eye of several teams. No wonder Chairman Qin took you as his godbrother. You are all young talents. Oh, I remember too. Not to be outdone, Boss Lee also tried to curry favor with him. Speaking of which, young Master Fu is really different from your elder brother. That young Master Fu is really... When Secretary Liang heard this, he knew that Boss Lee had mistaken him for someone else, so he was about to stop him. Chapter 86. I really can't say. President Lee shook his head. His taste is far from second young Master Fu's. Even his mother came from the countryside. She is illiterate, but she still wanted to start a company. She didn't think about her own ability, and in the end, she was still tricked by your father. It's one thing to say that this son is a joke, but even his mother is the same. Isn't she just trying to make fun of others? Boss Zhang agreed. I heard that he has some special hobbies. No wonder Boss Fu removed his name from the Fu family. If I had a son like him, I would be very angry. Luckily, Boss Fu still has you second young Master Fu. Secretary Liang listened to these two, and felt that it was over. It was really over. Although their CEO didn't say anything from the beginning to the end, from the smile on his face, and the way he flicked the ash off his cigarette, one could tell that he was exuding an endless coldness. Since CEO recognized young Master Fu as his younger brother, it meant that he was treating him as one of his own. CEO was always protective of his own people. Who knew what would happen next? Fujio supported her chin with her left hand, looking like a playboy. It seems that Boss Lee and Boss Zhang have never seen that illegitimate son, or else they wouldn't have recognized him. What a pity. I am that young Master Fu with special hobbies. Instantly, Mr. Lee's and Mr. Zhang's faces changed. The smile at the corner of his mouth stiffened. This was probably the most embarrassing situation they had ever faced in their business. Their faces were burning, and they wanted to find a crack in the ground to hide in. But CEO Qin was still sitting in front of them, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry from his noble and handsome face. Did this mean that there was still room for negotiation? Thinking of this, Boss Lee slapped his forehead. Look at my eyes, I really didn't recognize MT Tai. I will punish myself with a glass of wine, a glass of wine. I heard too much from others before, so I have a prejudice against young Master Fu. This wine must be drunk. Boss Zhang also raised his head and raised his glass. When the two of them drank the wine, they felt a little bitter. No matter how hard they racked their brains, they would never have imagined that young Master Qin would have any connections with the notorious nouveau riche. That was why he subconsciously treated Fujio as the second son of the Fu family. Now he had been slapped in the face. It was painful. However, Fujio didn't plan on forgiving them. Her previous self was problematic, but He Honghua wasn't a joke. Lord Jiu definitely didn't want to be made fun of like this. Her eyes were cold, and she stood up with a half smile. she said extremely coldly. Brother Mo, you guys eat first. Just like what these two CEOs said. I don't have good taste and self-restraint. I can't eat this meal, or drink this glass of wine in front of people I don't like. Manager Li and Manager Zhang's hands that were about to raise their glasses stopped. They thought to themselves that this temper was giving him face. If it wasn't for young Master Qin, who would have toasted him? If he said that, not only would they lose face, but also young Master Qin's. Even if young Master Qin recognized him as his little brother, did he really treat him as his own? Young Master Qin would let him go wherever he wanted, even if they didn't do anything. Chapter 87. Hearing that, Boss Li and Boss Zhang were dumbfounded. They watched helplessly as young Master Qin stood up himself. He was wearing a well-ironed suit, with a black jacket draped over his shoulders. He looked noble and condescending. The man was still holding Fujio in his hand. He glanced at them, and the coldness in his eyes made their hearts tremble. Young Master Qin, about our business today. Boss Li still wanted them to stay. Qin Mo laughed viciously. Do you think I'll like someone my brother doesn't like? It was just one sentence, but it was enough to make the two of them feel fear. It was as if a freezing chill had drilled into their bones. Young Master Qin, this is all a misunderstanding, young Master Qin. The two of them desperately wanted to explain. They chased all the way from the restaurant to the outside, but they were blocked by the bodyguards in black. They couldn't take another step. The two of them were anxious. They licked their dry lips and looked at Secretary Liang, who was at the back. Secretary Liang, can you help us talk to young Master Qin, or young Master Fu? If he doesn't like us, we can change it. Secretary Liang pushed up his glasses and looked at his CEO's left hand that was holding the young man's wrist. He wondered when his CEO's misophobia was cured, but he still didn't forget to deal with the two in front of him. Boss Li and Boss Zhang, CEO Qin's eyes are sharper than anyone else's. He could tell from your attitudes when you were drinking just now. Let me give you a suggestion. Don't mess around with our CEO Qin anymore. He's protective. He even said something like my brother. It seemed like the CEO was serious about protecting that young master of the Fu family. Fortunately, these two stood in front of him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to tell what the CEO meant. Secretary Liang decided that from now on, he would do whatever young Master Fu said. Pissing off young Master Fu was equivalent to pissing off their CEO. The consequences were unimaginable. Hearing Secretary Liang's words, Boss Li and Boss Zhang both froze on the spot. Their faces were ashen. The more they cursed in their hearts, the more they regretted it now. If they knew that young Master Qin cared so much about that young master of the Fu family, they wouldn't have looked down on him. Now they were willing to drink a bottle of wine as an apology. But everyone in Jiang City knew young Master Qin's temper. He wouldn't give them a second chance. This business deal was over. Right now, they were praying that young Master Qin would quickly forget about them. Otherwise, their companies might not be able to continue operating. What did that useless young master of the Fu family do to make young Master Qin protect him like this? It was strange that the two of them knew each other. Young Master Qin really treated him like a little brother. If this news was released, the entire business circle would be shocked. In fact, Fujio didn't expect that Qin Mo would go this far for her. She thought that calling him brother was just a form of address. What are you waiting for? Get in the car. Qin Mo opened the car door casually. His side profile was still handsome and charming. This time, Secretary Liang was driving, and both of them sat in the back seat. Fujio caught Secretary Liang looking at her from the rearview mirror more than once. She winked at him with an evil smile. Secretary Liang's hand slipped, and the car almost went off course. Chapter 88. Many people know that I have only slept for 2 hours since yesterday morning. I have spent the rest of my time defending my rights. The act of the infringer is to make use of the school hunk's fans and infringe upon the school hunk's copyright without my authorization. According to the perpetrator, she was helping to set up a fan club, claiming that they want to be the support group I described in my article. Thank you. But I don't need your help. I'm the copyright owner of this book. The School Hunks fan club has always been around, in 10-cent bookstore, and on official channels. The School Hunks official manager, Lou Bebe, Sister Turtle, who appeared in the novel, is the person I described in the novel, not someone you guys brought in by force. It felt like the characters in the book were about to cry from the humiliation. Don't cry. Daddy will make you look more handsome in the future. This incident could also be used as material to write about. After all, the little cuties in 10-cent bookstore's fan club were doing charity every day to make the School Hunk better and better. You, on the other hand, are infringing on the original author's painstaking efforts and obstructing the development of the School Hunk. There would be no harm without comparison. As for infringement, the law clearly states that a work of the same genre, without the authorization of the original author, is an infringement. Now the infringer is defending himself. They like the School Hunk. They are genuine fans. Our genuine fans are self-righteous. Excuse me. It must be because I didn't sleep enough to hear such a dumb joke. My fans are the cutest fans in the world. They are young and sometimes deceived. I wanted to thank them in every way I could think of. It's not wrong to say that they're infringers, but they don't understand why we're defending our rights. The group of people replied with anger that came from the depths of their hearts. It came from protecting. No one would remain silent when they saw something they liked being destroyed. As a school grassland author, I called out to those who truly liked the School Hunk. Reason complains. He only complained about the 4719555018 group. Don't get involved in anything else, and don't care about anything else. We only complain about 4719555018. You don't need to join the group to complain. You can just click on the top right corner to complain. When he saw some strange comments. For example, admin, you have to hold on. We love this book so much. You have to withstand the pressure and work hard. For example, if we like a book, we don't need to like the author. In such a situation, don't be angry. Hug my babies, don't be angry. It hurts to see you guys angry. As for those who are saying these things, I know that you don't really like this book. And you don't care that the creator's hard work is being lost. And you don't care that you're ruining the School Hunk and stealing it. But in this world there was a saying, justice may be late, but it will never be absent. The original author could not be protected for the time being. The School Hunk was temporarily unprotected. But that didn't mean they would never be protected. The infringers were clamoring for a lawyer's letter and a statement. Therefore, this statement must be posted here. In order to protect my rights, I will definitely reduce the number of updates. The like mentioned by the violator had already damaged the School Hunk. If one day I break even more, he must be dealing with this infringement case. So be prepared, dear ones. It's a pity that I've spared these 2 days to prepare for writing. I really don't have the time to defend my rights. Infringement was the bottom line. If they couldn't handle it, they could only defend their rights. The infringers were too unsightly. Also, I would like to thank the beauty who has been helping me complain and defend my rights. I will start legal proceedings to defend my rights. The perpetrator probably didn't dare to reveal her real name. We'll find out, but it'll take time. So dear ones, give me some strength. Let us get through this together. We're not white lotuses. We won't be like the infringers, saying that we're wronged and that it's not wrong. We will only defend our rights and protect the current School Hunk. Chapter 89. His beautiful thin lips lowered his voice, with a deep warning. Don't flirt with everyone you see. I was just saying hi to Secretary Liang. Fujio sat back lazily with one hand behind her back, looking very handsome. Chinemo thought about this guy's flirting skills, and didn't believe him at all. He threw a book into his hands and said in a lukewarm voice, "Lower your head and read your magazine. Secretary Liang is an old man. What's so interesting about him?" Secretary Liang, who was in the front, almost vomited blood when he heard this. He was not young, was he? But who did he piss off that CEO had to be so mean to him? Fujio flipped open the magazine, took a few glances and lost interest. She turned her head and said to the man who was sitting so elegantly, "Do you have a magazine with beautiful men and cars? Let's have a look. Hearing this, Secretary Liang's heart jumped again. All of a sudden, he remembered something. This young Master Fu of the Fu family, he was gay. The CEO couldn't have been turned gay by him, right? No, that's impossible. Even if his young master didn't like women, he wouldn't like men either. But what if it was true? Wait a minute. How could he forget that CEO was in an online relationship, and there was a little vixen waiting for him in the game, sending him WeChat messages every day? So it was impossible for CEO to be gay. His imagination was really too rich. Ha ha ha. Just when Secretary Liang was about to heave a sigh of relief, he saw his CEO reach out and pinched the youngster's chin. His handsome face was also very close. That posture was like the posture before a kiss, breaking the distance he had been maintaining with people for many years. I don't care what your sexual orientation is, but when you join the team, you are not allowed to flirt with anyone. You'd better put away those weird things you read, and only read that business magazine. If you don't shut up, I will throw you out. That tone was not threatening at all. Apart from the gloomy feeling of gnashing his teeth, it really sounded like he was disciplining his younger brother. But what did CEO say? Join the team. That meant that the little vixen CEO went to the club to find today was the loser young Master Fu. Was that so? No, he had to confirm it. He couldn't just make random guesses. How could the internet secret lover that the CEO couldn't forget be a man? Young Master Gio, how did you meet our president? To be honest, when I saw you just now, I was also shocked. Fu Jio also thought this Secretary Liang was a good person. She held the magazine and said casually, I met him in the game. Today, I went to the Qin Corporation's internal competition. Brother Mo came to see me to see how I did. It really was that little vixen. Secretary Liang couldn't tell what he was feeling now. He looked straight ahead, his palms sweating. Just like that, Fu Jio was sent home. When she got out of the car, she turned sideways to pick up the computer parts she had bought. Between her white top and black belt, her smooth and fair waist was exposed. It was a breathtaking curve. Chapter 90. The clothes she was wearing, weren't they short? Fu Jio looked down at herself. Didn't other boys wear normal-sized tops like this? As for manliness, she, who was a woman at heart, had no need for it. Of course, she wouldn't say this out loud. She just replied casually, got it. Qin Mo looked at the young man's nonchalant look and raised his eyebrows. I'm going to play tennis tomorrow. You can come too. I have class tomorrow. Did Almighty Qin forget that she was still a student? Qin Mo's voice was very calm. I'll wait for you after class. My little brother can't look like this. Look like this. What does it look like? Fu Jio laughed. She put her hand on Qin Mo's shoulder and approached him slowly. Brother Mo, do you dare to say that I'm not handsome? Qin Mo pushed the young man's hand away and pinched his chin. There was still a little bit of disdain in his eyes, and his tone was cold. You are at most pretty. Handsome my *s. Come exercise with me. Don't play games at home all the time. You're making yourself so tender. She was blaming her for her good skin. Fu Jio realized that Almighty Qin really wanted to raise her as his little brother. If Almighty Qin found out that she was a girl, would he crush her to death? Fu Jio glanced at the man guiltily. Actually, I have something to do tomorrow. Qin Mo laughed. He was a little black-bellied, and he was very domineering. Keep your excuses. I'll pick you up at the school gate after class tomorrow. Fu Jio. She really couldn't slip away. Go in. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He leaned against the sports car and raised his eyebrows at her. Fu Jio curled her lips. Okay, brother Mo. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. Okay. Qin Mo replied and got in the car. He left first. Fu Jio watched the black sports car disappear before she went into the house. It seemed like someone had been in the house. Things were thrown on the ground, and it was a mess. Fu Jio's eyes turned cold, and she asked Chen Xiaodong, what's going on? The few remaining members of the company have been poached away. Now the company has become an empty shell. Madam is upset so. Chen Xiaodong clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. They even mocked Madam for not having the slightest bit of ability, for not being able to bring out a decent team. Fujio raised her hand and threw the things onto the sofa with a smack. She smiled coldly. Who else is coming? Liang Xuguang, Zhang Yingqiao and Nie Su. These 3 people are all on the rankings. When they first joined the company, their conditions weren't very good. Many places didn't want them. It was Madam who saw that they came from small places and couldn't bear to let them go back. So she spent a lot of effort to groom them. Now that they have fans and their skills have improved, they are stepping on Madam Ba. Young Master. In fact, what hurt Madam the most was not that they had left, but that she had been betrayed by the person closest to her. Chen Xiaodong's eyes turned red at the end. After hearing this, Fujio stopped going upstairs. She put on the jacket she had just taken off. Her silver hair was blown away by the wind, and her eyes were full of coldness. Wait a minute, where are you going? Chen Xiaodong followed behind. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.